Hi, I'm Dustin Hoyt with America Our Way, and you can hear me right here on Vigilant Liberty Radio at 10/9 Central on Thursday nights. We bring you the best in political commentary from the right-wing, conservative, libertarian perspectives coming together and bringing the best content on the internet. Be sure to tune in every week for your favorite shows. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Mr. President, members of Congress, you've been making a lot of noise about taking our guns away. But you might want to review history. 1835, Gonzales, Texas Territory. The authorities wanted to confiscate the big gun that protected that colony. You know what the people said? Come and take it. Because they were willing to fight for their freedom and their guns. So are we.
Come and take it if you want it. Come and take it if you think you can. Come and take it, but I warn you, you'll have to pry it from my cold dead hands. We want the freedom that God gave us, so you best not cross that line. If you want this gun, you gotta come through us and take it.
One shot at a time. Just like Gonzales, we're keeping our guns.
This is Ed Morrissey of HotAir.com, and you're listening to Vigilant Liberty Radio.
You're listening to Saturday Night Cigar Lounge with Taylor right here on Vigilant Liberty Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 3, Overtime, here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. I am your host, Taylor Millard. We got probably about, 30 minutes or so left in the program. So, it's been a fun week regarding vaccinations discussion. It's really been kind of a fun week when it comes to the discussion about vaccines and everything that goes into that, and what you end up seeing in, well, how people are now discussing what should happen. And when I say that what should happen, whether there should be a choice for parents to have their kids vaccinated or not. Because there are anti-vaxxers out there, and there is currently a measles outbreak in the U.S. that, well, is because anti-vaxxers aren't doing the MMR vaccines. Chris Christie, earlier this week, said that there should be a balance and as the Washington Post reported, what Chris Christie said was, Mary Pat and I have had our children vaccinated, and we think it's an important part of being sure we protect the health and the public health. I also understand that parents need to have some measure of choice in things as well, so that the balance that the government has to decide. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that there should be choice out there. That's what Christie thinks. Rand Paul made a very similar comment, although it may have been a little bit clunkier, and it makes, some people have been discussing whether or not he's an anti-vaccine nut job, as Nick Gillespie put it. I'll just put it this way. Rand Paul said this in 2009. The first sort of thing you see with martial law is mandates. And they're talking about making it mandatory. He's talking about vaccines. I worry because the first flu vaccine we had in the 1970s, more people died from the vaccine than died from swine flu. Well, he's wrong on there, as Nick Gillespie at Reason pointed out, because the first flu vaccines were actually in the 1930s, not the 1970s. The other thing that he said on CNBC is that I've heard of many tragic cases of walking, talking, normal children who wound up with mental disorders after vaccines. Well, that is... there is debate on that. But according to analysis that was done by Science Direct at ScienceDirect.com, a study which was done which shows that there is no relationship between vaccines and autism. There is no relationship between vaccination and ASD. No relations between autism, ASD, and MMR, or thimerosal, and mercury. So Paul was wrong in his suggestions. He was wrong. He was wrong in suggesting that. But here's the other thing that's really important, and what he argued also on CNBC that people need to realize is that vaccines are one of the biggest medical breakthroughs that we've had. And public awareness of how good vaccines are for kids and how they are good for public health is a great idea. So, what's he saying? He thinks kids should be vaccinated. He thinks vaccines are a good thing. Although he is worried about, the vaccine and autism, which has been discredited. It depends on the study sometimes, I think. But more importantly, what Paul said is that there should be a choice. A choice. Parents should have a choice. I'm actually in favor of it. I'm in favor of people having choices, whether it's right or not. Whether it's right or not. I'm looking at this. I'm loving this. Our good friend Amanda Marcotte wrote something at Alternet, which of course Alon cross-posted. And I love this part. I want to read this part. Okay? Demanding the right to expose your children to contagious and even deadly diseases for your half-baked principles fits right into the existing conservative mindset clearly. Republicans are already hostile to the idea of the common good, particularly when it comes to health care. The ongoing battle over the Affordable Care Act really goes back to one basic principle, which is that the Republicans reject the idea of universal health care. At the core, hostility towards universal health care is rooted in the deep classism of the right. Give me a break. They don't want to share their neighborhood schools or churches with lower class people, so of course they don't want to share the medical system. Come on. Similarly, anti-vaccine advocacy is primarily an affectation of upper-middle-class and wealthy Americans who aren't exactly subtle about their disdain about having to subject their children to the same tawdry needle-based health care that poor people get. As Dr. Jack Wolfson told CNN, "My child is pure. It's not my responsibility to be protecting their child." Now, I will say this, okay? I actually agree with Wolfson that it isn't the responsibility to protect someone else's child unless they're on your property. Playing with your kids and stuff like that, I think you need to try to keep them safe. Put them in safer situations. Now, accidents are going to happen. It's a part of life. Accidents happen. But to suggest that Rand Paul and Chris Christie are being truthers when it comes to vaccines is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Vicky in the chat room actually just pointed out something, and I appreciate her doing that, is apparently a retracted British study. This was from 2011, a retracted British study that linked autism to childhood vaccines was an elaborate fraud, according to British medical journal BMJ. What BMJ's editor-in-chief told CNN, it's one thing to have a bad study, a study full of error, and for the authors to admit that they made errors. But in this case, we have a very different picture of what seems to be a deliberate attempt to create an impression that there was a link by falsifying the data. Maybe what was going on is the fact that they had a conversation with Brian Williams, and they just decided to do a Brian Williams, this study with all the false data. Maybe that's what happened. But to suggest that conservatives and libertarians are vaccine truthers because they want parents to have a choice, that's very irresponsible. Amanda Marcotte, not that I think you're listening to the show, but I'll say it anyway. Amanda Marcotte, you are very, very irresponsible for saying that. Very irresponsible. I now expect to be called a woman hater because I called you irresponsible. I don't care. You're irresponsible, Amanda Marcotte, for saying that. A great comment that was made by Judge Andrew Napolitano. The issue, according to Paul, is who owns your body. This is a question the government does not want to answer truthfully, because if it does, it will sound like Big Brother in George Orwell's novel 1984. Because the government believes it owns your body. The idea of life, liberty, and property. Now, I know that there are going to be people who then want to talk about, well, what about abortion? We're not going to get into that. Because the reason why we are not going to get into that is that that really delves into